Hillary Taylor. I'm one of the long-range planners at the City of Wilmington. And yeah, today we're going to be talking about the City of Wilmington's Resilient Coastal Communities program. This program is actually funded by the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, and we're implementing it in partnership with an environmental engineering firm called Moffat and Nichols. So I'm going to do a quick presentation together with my colleague David, and we are going to have a little activity afterwards where you can vote on your favorite actions to help make Wilmington more resilient. All right. So this project has been going on since September of last year. There are two project deliverables. One is a risk and vulnerability assessment, which helps us to identify the communities and the assets that are the most vulnerable to natural disasters like hurricanes and floods, extreme heat, etc. in Wilmington. And the second is a list of projects to help address the impacts of those identified hazards. So on the screen I have some examples of community-based and built environment-based and ecosystems-based measures that can help to make Wilmington a more resilient community, but we're going to take a deep dive into that later on. Okay, so a little bit about why Wilmington applied for the RCCP program. Well, the city had already been doing some resiliency projects like installing flood gauges across the city in priority areas, but what we really needed was a more cohesive citywide strategy to identify all the resiliency actions that needed to be taken across the entire city and to prioritize those actions so we know where to start on making Wilmington more resilient. We also recently adopted the Greater Downtown Plan, as some of you may know. So residents during the Greater Downtown Plan process let us know that enhancing disaster resilience through things like green infrastructure and nature-based solutions was a big priority to them. So resiliency was actually woven throughout all themes of the plan. So this RCCP project can also help us to reinforce and implement those resident priorities throughout Greater Downtown. And thirdly, we also have a comprehensive plan update coming up, as well as the update of what we call the Coastal Area Management Act, or CAMA, land use plan. And this is a plan that's required in all 20 coastal counties in North Carolina. So as we're updating these documents, we want to ensure that resiliency is a key focus, and we want the results of this RCCP study to be incorporated into these plans. So as we know, Wilmington is surrounded by water with the Cape Fear River on one side and the Intercoastal Waterway on the other. So it's low-lying and therefore exposed to a range of hazards like king tide, rainfall flooding, sea level rise, hurricanes, and as we're experiencing a rise in global temperatures over the past decades, we're also seeing extreme heat and wildfires becoming increasingly prominent. And so these are some of the future projections of temperature, precipitation, and sea level rise from the 2020 North Carolina Climate Science Report. And this shows that both temperature rise and changing rainfall patterns are expected in Wilmington, and sea levels have also been rising. So these changes are expected to contribute to an increase in the frequency and intensity of severe weather events in the coming decades. So these natural hazards, of course, have an impact on residential and commercial buildings, including our beautiful historic districts, and with disproportionate impacts to communities that have historically lacked access to quality housing and infrastructure. Our roads and bridges are also impacted by flooding. And while our stormwater infrastructure, it was good when we first built it, but with the recent population growth, in some areas it's been reaching its limits in capacity. So we talked a little bit about the impacts to the built environment, but of course the communities that live within this built environment are also impacted by extreme weather events as well. So sensitivity, it refers to the factors that amplify the impacts that communities are experiencing. So for example, higher poverty rates in some neighborhoods limit residents' ability to bounce back from disaster events due to factors like lack of access to health care or lack of access to flood and health insurance. limited tree cover in some of these areas, as well as extensive concrete surfaces, can create urban heat islands, leaving residents vulnerable to heat-related illnesses as well. And at the same time, Wilmington's business community suffer from devastating loss of income and assets during extreme weather events. So on a positive note, what is the city already doing to help address flood impacts? The Clear Run Branch Stormwater Capital Improvement Project is an $11 million project near UNCW and New Center Drive, with a goal of reducing chronic flooding and enhancing natural habitat through nature-based solutions like stream restoration and floodplain creation, as well as hard infrastructure like pipes. And the Wade Park, this is a 17-acre park located in Pine Valley. It includes 12 acres of constructed wetland. It basically serves as a giant sponge to retain stormwater. So right now we're in the Resilient Coastal Communities Project, phases 1 and 2. There's also phase 3 and 4 where the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality can fund projects like these with a nature-based component. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hand it over to David to talk a little bit about our community engagement.
Yeah, thank you, Hillary. So I'm David Ingram. Nice to be here with you all this morning. I'm the Sustainability Manager for the City of Wilmington. So enjoying participating in the RCC program with Hillary's staff. So
a little louder.
Sure. A big component of the RCCP program is our community engagement activities. So we've reached out across the city, as well as having all of these other stakeholders involved in the program, everything from UNCW staff to Cape Fear Riverwatch staff, as mentioned earlier, to really kind of get a broad coalition of members and knowledge involved in the program. As you can see, the community engagement, you can see some of the locations here on the map where we've really tried to reach out across the community to get as broad input as possible for the program. We've gone through most of these, so we still have a few upcoming, or these were all the phase 1 portions. So these were community engagement activities that we've already completed. We're now into phase 2 and doing events like these for even more input. But at the community engagement, we did activities such as hazard mapping, asking residents, where in the community have you seen some of these, flooding or extreme heat or anything like that. And we were able to map a lot of those onto a map, which we can dive into in a little bit. As well as other questions, what are barriers to recovery for whenever a storm event or other natural hazard hits, as well as what kind of desired interventions would be most effective to mitigate some of those hazards. And from those community-wide meetings, we were able to generate a citywide map highlighting things like where drought, erosion, excessive heat, flooding, loss of tree canopy were most noted by our community members. And you can see kind of the various what they felt were the most prevalent. So the 33% was cost. When a storm hit, what's the biggest barrier to recovery? And a lot of times that's things like just having the funding to recover from a disaster.
Excuse me.
Yeah, please, no worries. As well as some of the most desired interventions, so things like improved emergency services, restoration and conservation ranked really highly. So what can we do to not only restore services, but what can we do to conserve some of the tree canopy and other things like that to naturally help to mitigate storm hazards. And just kind of comparing the results in regard to barriers that underserved communities rank most highly as compared to what other areas ranked. And interesting, they for the most part things were ranked similar across the board. So cost is obviously a big impact and a barrier to recovery, as well as things like just general knowledge of what are the services that the city provides, and what can we do ahead of time to identify areas for residents to take advantage of to help recover from to mitigate as well as recover from storm events. And again, just some of the community desired interventions in all other areas versus interventions in underserved communities. So things like that knowledge and access, again, ranked highly in the underserved communities, and opportunities like green infrastructure and trees. Our tree canopy here in the city is obviously a big mitigator, both for urban heat island effect, but also to help absorb stormwater. So, and particularly in areas where tree canopy is not necessarily as dense as we would like to see, that green infrastructure, particularly I think on some of the northern downtown communities, were quite important. So. Again, just some pics of some of the community outreach events we did across the city. Some kind of pop-up events and some more kind of public access events in our Skyline Center downtown. Yeah, and just we reach out for comments as well if perhaps there's some items that we may not have noted as interventions or barriers, and we reach out to get resident comments in regard to what they've identified as things that we need to consider. So addressing drainage issues during heavy rainfall events. Sometimes it may not be stormwater infrastructure that the city has necessarily identified as a problem area, but sometimes it's those residents within their neighborhoods that know where those specific problems are across the city. So it's a great way for us to get identify those areas we may or may not know about. Nature-based solutions to address stormwater and extreme heat. So things like the Wade Park that Hillary had an example of, where it's just like a giant sponge that's able to soak up a lot of the stormwater that the city receives. Affordable housing, that's something obviously that we're aware of across the city. It's not an issue only here in Wilmington, but obviously one we're trying to address here, and our city council is aware of the need for affordable housing to address some of the community, as well as making it a strong, well-built, resilient housing as well. And being able to address all of our population. So a lot of the materials that we have when we go out for the public engagement, we have both in English and Spanish speaking. So trying to address some of the residents across the community that may need a little bit of additional support in regard to understanding what we're trying to achieve. Homeowner education, I'm just kind of buzzing through some of the additional comments here, but on the far side, resilient road infrastructure to meet the demands of a growing population. Obviously, our city is growing, and the projections for it to grow by 2050 are significant. So making sure the infrastructure that we're putting in now and the long-range planning we're putting in is addressing some of those growth projections for our road infrastructure and stormwater systems. Yeah, and just the risk and vulnerability assessments from the community input. We're able to develop these maps and even kind of give them some of that sensitivity rankings that Hillary was speaking about earlier. And it really kind of, on the overall hazard exposure map, you can see the darker red areas where are more critical areas for stormwater, and kind of across the board environmental impacts from storm events and extreme heat as well. And then just identifying some of the critical assets across our community, whether that's, you know, fire stations and police stations that need to stay operational during storms, or roads and bridges that could possibly be flooded during high water storm events, hospitals, things like that. So community centers where perhaps residents could go to during, if power was out. Are there some of our community centers, or are there ways that we can, you know, maintain power in those and provide those as a community asset? And you know, we are able to give all of those critical assets a scoring, and kind of really kind of hone in on which ones are the most valuable to the community, and from that help us identify these projects moving forward that we think are going to be most beneficial to the community. So that'll be it's kind of what this phase 2 process is identifying what those projects are going to be, and then phase 3 is going to be the next step in the process. Whoops, went backwards. Wrong way. And from that I just mentioned, we've, you know, already kind of identified some preliminary project list. So things like community resilience and environment, identifying areas where we can do green stormwater infrastructure, some additional planning and policy work that will make implementing projects such as those easier across the city. Critical infrastructure and utilities, so things like some of our CFPUA facilities, making sure that even if a storm event happens, we're still going to be able to have access to clean water and water treatment facilities. That was obviously a problem during Florence several years ago, where we got very close to losing some of those assets. So what can we do to make sure that they, you know, maintain power, have enough fuel to operate, you know, all of those issues. As well as kind of a regional collaboration. So, you know, we're part of a very growing area here, so making sure that we're not only looking at just Wilmington, but have partners outside of our community that we can also adapt some of these plans with. So, you know, not only just the city, but county-wide as well. So New Hanover County, as well as some of our surrounding county partnerships. And then just our community engagement and equity, you know, things like making sure we're supporting food distribution centers, and, you know, so when events happen, we're making sure that we're planning to be able to feed and get clean water, healthy food to our residents.
I can take on that.
You
one,
want
I
that one?
think.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll do that one. Yeah. Thank you, David. Okay, so actually, I'll go back a little bit. So these 5 themes are the themes that were required by NCDQ, but underneath each of these themes we've created a list of projects like David was saying, and we created these activities that are up front to help residents easily vote on their priority actions within each of these themes. And we combined regional collaboration and community engagement and equity into one board because there was a fewer number of actions. But we'll have you come up and do this activity in just a second. But in phase 1 of community engagement, we tried to do like a geographically equally distributed outreach across all 12 planning areas in the city. But for phase 2, what we heard from phase 1 is they want us to focus a little bit more on non-English speakers and unhoused, the homeless population, because they would be extremely vulnerable during disaster events. So for phase 2, we decided to do some outreach specifically in grocery giveaways and food banks. There are also, a couple slides back, we saw some of the areas that are really vulnerable, they're really exposed. Why is this not working?
There you go.
Oh, there we go. So you see the River Lights area on the southeast of Wilmington, as well as some of the intercoastal waterway side, Masonboro. Those are highly exposed areas, so we're also doing some outreach in those communities as well. So that's where we're going to be taking these pop-ups. And then for survey circulation, we of course would like you to distribute the online survey to your networks. So we'll have that sent out later. Let's see, Sierra Club, Heal Our Waterways, which is one of our city programs that focus on Bradley Creek and Hewlett's Creek for like mini grants for green infrastructure. And then residents of Old Wilmington, the Historic Wilmington Foundation, Castle Street Collective, WDI, OLLI at UNCW, which is a program for adults 50 plus, and then the Coastal Federation, Alliance of Cape Fear Trees, New Hanover County Arboretum. So that's where those are the stakeholders that we're asking to distribute the survey, as well as our community action team. Yeah, so with that, thank you. Yes, go ahead.
I'm more interested in implementation than the information gathering.
Okay.
What do you all report to? Can you give us some examples of things that have been suggested, and then who acts on it? Is it city council or what happens?
Yes. So this list of projects that we've developed, and I'm going to have everyone come out here and look at them for us and give us suggestions on the actions themselves. But yes, once this list is formulated, once we receive feedback from the community and incorporated it, it will be going to City Council for approval. After that, various departments will be implementing it. There are some actions that the planning department will be in charge of. Some of them will be through CIP's capital improvement projects through the engineering department. Others would be through like sustainability with David. We have some energy resiliency measures, for example. Public engagement, we have a whole department dedicated to community engagement. So we will be developing a plan, an action plan with timelines attached to it, and monitoring and evaluating it as well through a dashboard. So, and that's actually one of the measures that are proposed under public engagement, is to make sure that we continuously listen to the voices of the community and reflect that feedback through our actions and have a dashboard to communicate what exactly we're doing back to the community.
Do you have a role if something happens in a sense of immediacy? Like today in the news, the cyber attacks on the water systems. Is that something that you all are looking at, or is somebody else looking at it? And does it affect the ability to get the water, or are they actually influencing the chemicals that are being put in the water?
So the cyber attacks are not going to be our department. This resiliency program focuses mostly on natural disaster resiliency. We do have an emergency management coordinator, or I think, what's his new title? Jason Eves is the our new emergency management person is going to be in charge of items like that. So this project is a little bit different from there's like different components of resiliency,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well, we do have some CFPUA on our CAT team.
On our CAT team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're as far as issues with the water treatment system, staff with CFPUA are at least involved with this project, and yeah.